All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming to our education series. The purpose of this series is to help nonprofits get the tools that they need to grow and to share their stories. So we usually focus on marketing topics. That's obviously what we do. But today's a special one because we have a partner webinar with our partner GrantStation, who connects nonprofits with grant opportunities. And so I would love to introduce David Gates, who is here with the GrantStation team, who's going to be showing us around the platform. Um, David, you ready?
I'm ready. Thank you, Kristen. So as Kristen said, my name is David Gates. I am the online education specialist at GrantStation. I live a little bit north of Seattle, but I'm actually a bit farther away right now. I'm over in the Netherlands, actually, at the moment. So kind of calling from far away. But just to give you a quick agenda of what we're going to talk about today. So first, I'm just going to give you a very brief overview of GrantStation, what we do, and how our website is kind of stacked and formulated. Then we'll look at how you can start a grant seeking project. Then we'll find the perfect funder using our various databases. Afterwards, I'll show you a couple of additional tools that GrantStation offers. And then last but not least, I'll take any questions that you may have. So I am going to actually turn off my camera now, and you can just focus on the website. So let me minimize that. Okay, so just to give you a little bit more background about GrantStation. GrantStation features a set of searchable databases filled with current grant opportunities. We provide tools and tutorials on grant seeking and writing, and we keep you up to date on the latest philanthropic trend. Now, all of the grantmaker profiles on GrantStation, both government and private, are actively accepting requests or letters of inquiry from a variety of organizations. Now, a lot of you may have used other services where you do your research and get hundreds of returns, leaving you with a long list of potential funders to screen without knowing how relevant they are to your specific needs or if you can or even should apply to them. Our job is to pre-screen grant makers so the time you spend researching generates a list of grant makers that may truly accept a request to fund your organization's program or project. Again, everything you find on GrantStation is open for requests or letters of inquiry. So now let's dive into the website. From any page, you can use the top menu to navigate to the various sections of our website. First, I want to just show you quickly our public resources tab. In our public resources tab, you'll see information about the 3 newsletters that GrantStation publishes. These newsletters highlight upcoming funding opportunities. For most of you, the most relevant newsletter is going to be the GrantStation Insider. This is a weekly publication and it features 10 distinct opportunities for US-based nonprofit organizations. We also have a monthly International Insider as well as a monthly Canadian Insider. And everything in the public resources section of GrantStation is free and open to the public. But near the top are the resources you will get access to as a full member of GrantStation. This is find grant makers, build strategy, and write proposals. When you click on find grant makers, it's going to open the search section where all of our databases are located. And we're going to spend a lot of time looking at this here today. Our build strategy section provides a complete walkthrough of articles that will help you build a solid grant seeking strategy, including an interactive tool that will visually lay out where your funding needs to come from. And when you hit write proposals, you'll find step-by-step tutorials you can use to prepare everything you need, from how to write compelling letters of inquiry, a complete breakdown of all the parts contained within a full grant proposal, and you can even view successful grant proposals so you can see what is currently working. Finally, you can also visit the online education section along the top of the page. You can see some of our current webinar offerings, which include an image management webinar, webinars on capacity building and making friends with funders. Our webinars are open to the public and do not require a GrantStation membership, but access to the webinars is not included in a GrantStation membership. But they are available within an affordable cost range for both individuals or groups to participate in. And our presenters are all extremely bright minds in the field of grant writing, grant strategy, fundraising, and nonprofit management. So if you're looking to further develop any of these skills, I highly recommend seeing what is on offer. Now, an important part of a GrantStation membership And one we're going to talk about a lot throughout today's tour is the custom dashboard. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview here. I'll click on my dashboard and let's start with an introduction. So here in your dashboard, you'll see a variety of different tabs that includes things like your reports, the different projects you're working on, save criteria, save grant makers, my plan. And we're going to go through each one of those sections here today. So your dashboard is really a good part to start when beginning a project. And we're going to go through two different projects today to help you better understand GrantStation's capabilities. So I'm going to click that projects tab to get started. So for our first project, let's imagine you're a community orchestra located north of San Francisco in Marin County, California. You offer music education programs in the schools, after school course and band activities, and a summer music camp for underserved youth. The symphony is looking for $80,000 in new funds so they can establish an instrument library where underserved youth can check out instruments for long-term use. Now, one of the first steps we recommend to really help you organize your approach, flesh out your budget, and serve as a solid foundation for your grant seeking strategy is to complete a project description worksheet. And how you can do so is from your dashboard under projects, you can click on add a new project, or you can see here the community orchestra project. I've already started that one, so let's take a look. So when I click on the community orchestra, it brings up this project description worksheet. And this is just a great place to organize the project for yourself. So you see here, it's the community orchestra project. I provide that high level description. I could add in the statement of need, the budget summary, the geographic scope, the geographic focus. And then we get down here, we see the search terms. And I'm going to actually click this link to show you more about our search terms, as they are a really important step when starting a project. And we encourage GrantStation's members to really familiarize themselves with our search term, as it will help you discover potential funding sources once you begin looking for funders in our database. And it's going to make that search process a lot smoother. And just to note, you can access the search terms page through your dashboard, like I just did, or you can use this top menu, click on Find Grant Makers, Search Terms. So our search term contain descriptions of the key terminology used on our website, and this is the same terminology used by grant makers themselves. And it serves as a great guide when doing your keyword research. To use this area, we simply enter a keyword to see which categories you'll want to check when you are searching. And then we're going to save this on that project description worksheet so you're on the same page as the grant maker. So let's find search terms for that community orchestra. So as we're an orchestra trying to build this instrument library, maybe on the right, the first thing that I'll do is enter the term orchestra and see what pops up. Now, when I click on orchestra, as you can see, there are no results. And that's likely because it's just a bit too specific. There are no or very few grant makers who are funding orchestras specifically. So we want to back it up a little bit and try the word music, and let's see what it appears. Now, when I click on music, we get some good results. So under arts, cultures, and humanities, we see music, and it has topics include but are not limited to things like educational programs. So arts, cultures, and humanities music is probably a good search term that I want to remember. But maybe since this program focuses on underserved youth, I could type that into the keyword area as well. So let's type that in, underserved youth, click apply. And then I see under social services and issues, at-risk youth, topics include but are not limited to underserved youth. So now that I've found the right search terms, what I would do next is go back to my dashboard, click on projects, and then I would save those search terms under that community orchestra project. So click on community orchestra, and down here we can see the search terms I just found. I could also in the target populations, I'm working with youth, and then I could even add in the types of support. This is, an equipment one. So now I've successfully completed that project description worksheet. So we've really begun a project. Now it's time to find the perfect funder. So we're going to begin our primary funder research by looking at government funding opportunities first, and I'm going to explain why in a moment. So let's begin with the US state government section. So I click on Find Grant Makers, US state government. Now, GrantStation offers access to listings of state-funded agencies and state departments for each of the 50 states and the District of Columbia that offer financial and technical assistance programs. So in this case, I would click on my state, which would be California. Now, when we get to the state pages, on the left, we see a list of general resources. One way you might use these resources is when writing your needs statement. It's often great to have some demographic information. You could find that under the population and census data right here. Then on the right, you're going to notice a key that shows the different types of support. We have contracts, grants, information, loans, miscellaneous support, and training and technical assistance. Then you can look down the list and see what is available in each of those main categories. For example, in our situation, we see that the Arts Council is offering grants. So I certainly want to investigate that option to see if that might fit my needs. So what I would do is just click on the Art Council, and that's going to take me to the web page for the Art Council from the state of California. So I have direct information about the types of grants they offer. And if you see something that is relevant to your organization or project, then you follow the link for more information. But if not, you can move on to the next step in your primary research, which is discovering what is available from the US government in our US federal section. So then I would get to the US federal section by clicking Find Grant Makers, US Federal. Now the information in our US federal section comes directly from grants.gov. Now you can search through this area using eligible applicants, funding agencies, areas of interest, keywords, funding opportunity number, and the CFDA number as well. So for example, I could start with eligible applicants. I could start with nonprofits that have a 501c3 status. And this just shows everything that is available from the US government in that. Now, what else I could do is maybe narrow it down by areas of interest. So I could click on arts, but one of the best ways to actually search is understanding a bit more about the funding agencies that are going to be relevant for your program or project. And this does require a bit of knowledge about what type of agencies might fund your program or project. Now, federal grants can certainly feel overwhelming. And we also offer articles and webinars that deal with how to apply for these grants specifically. But a really important reason why you should begin your research with US state and federal government sections is because when you apply to private funders, you can say that you have looked into federal and state opportunities. And in case you don't find any options, you can tell the funder, at this time, there are no federal or state programs that can help us with our needs. That way, the private funder knows that you have done your homework, which speaks to your credibility. And they also know that private funding is now the only option for you. So once you've completed your state and federal research, you can then move on to the US Charitable Database. So I click on Find Grant Makers, US Charitable. Now, GrantStation's US Charitable Giving Database lists thousands of funder profiles, including independent, family, community, and corporate foundations, corporate giving programs, faith-based grant makers, and associations with grant-making programs. In the content area on the left, you'll find a guide to help you through the search process. And on the right, you're going to see the navigation area where you can enter your criteria. Now, these profiles are searchable by geographic scope, areas of interest, target population, types of support. You can also do type of grant maker. You could enter in the keyword as well. So let's do a search for our instruments library so you can see how you would use GrantStation's charitable giving database. Now we should begin with our geographic scope. And you can choose to search for global grant makers giving to US organizations, national grant makers who give across the United States, or choose a specific state to see grant makers who give in your specific region. So for now, let's click on California. So just check that box. So we can see grant makers giving there, but I'm also going to choose national grant makers who give across all states. Now, as each criteria is added or subtracted, it's going to broaden or narrow the funding opportunities being displayed. This initial process of choosing our geographic scope allows us to cast our search net as wide as possible, combining national opportunities with state-based ones to really see just how many funders will be able to support our needs. But once we start selecting other criteria, our results will begin to narrow to funding opportunities that are a perfect fit for our needs. So now that we have a geographic area selected, we are ready to select our areas of interest from our earlier search terms. So let's start by selecting music. So click on areas of interest, arts, cultures, and humanities, and check music. So here we see quite a few results. There are 123 organizations or grant makers who are giving either across the US or in California to programs that support music. That's probably a bit too many to effectively research. So I am going to want to narrow down these results a little bit more. So what I could do is also check the second search term we found. So if you remember right, under social services and issues, it was at-risk youth. And now we're down to 8 results. And this is a really narrow number of results because when I select both, this is only going to show donors who give to both music and at-risk youth organizations, not music or at-risk youth programs. So the results here could be a really good fit as we're fulfilling 2 areas of funding for these grant makers, but a lot of times you do not need to be that specific. So for today, let's back up and just focus on music. So I would just get rid of the areas of interest, at-risk youth, by clicking that minus sign. But I do want to narrow down these results a little bit more. So maybe I'll select the target population. And we're working with children and youth, so I'll select that one as well. And now we're down to 51 results. That's probably still a bit too many to effectively research, but it may be possible as you can really eliminate quite a few pretty quickly by reading about their geographic focus. So for example, here with MCOR Cares, they're giving to communities with company operations. So if my community doesn't have an MCOR facility, I'm not going to fulfill their needs. But today, since I'm trying to find that perfect funder, I'm going to actually add in the type of support that I'm searching for. In this case, it is equipment. So I'll go into here, type of support, equipment. Now I'm down to a much more manageable list. So we can start to investigate these leads a little bit. And by looking at their geographic scope, their geographic focus, one that pops up right away that I see here is the Classic for Kids Foundation, and they're giving across the entire United States. So I want to learn a little bit more about them. I'm going to click on the link to see their funder profile. So now, as you can see, in terms of their mission, this funder is just about a perfect fit. Their mission is to empower young people to shape positive futures through music, build sustainable stringed instrument music programs, and provide grants for high quality instruments. So what I would want to do then is actually save this grant maker so that I can do some additional research later on. So what I would do is click on Save Here. And then this is going to allow me to actually add them to one of thy projects. So as we remember, before I started that project description worksheet, that community orchestra project, and now I click save. So now I would want to do a little bit more research. Let's go back here and take a look at the Crescent Porter Hale Foundation. And I see here that they're giving in the San Francisco Bay Area. That's probably a pretty good fit for me. Now let's take a look at them. So I see that the Crescent Porter Hale Foundation supports people in my county, Marin County. They work with underserved youth. Uh, they work with arts or music education programs, and they are willing to provide things for equipment. They could also be a pretty good fit. So I'd probably want to save this grant maker as well. So click save. This is going to pop up the community orchestra. And I'll click save there as well. So now I've saved this funder here. Now, if we look a little bit further, and then if I see here, the Hobson Lucas Family Foundation, they're also giving in the San Francisco Bay Area. So let's check out their profile. Now I see the Hobson Lucas Family Foundation supports nonprofits in the San Francisco Bay Area. That's great. They want to benefit children, also great. And they work on things with arts and culture, music, also probably a pretty good fit. And the type of support equipment, I would definitely want to investigate this funder a little bit more as well. So I would save them here. So click on save. This is going to bring this up for me. I'll add them to community orchestra project. And now I've found 3 good leads. And just so you're aware, one other way you could save a funder is just over here on the left. If I click save, that's going to allow me to do the same thing. So this search has already given us 3 pretty good leads. But let's imagine, it's the end of the day and you just don't have time to look through all of these pages or these different funder profiles. But you do not want to lose this search. What you can do is actually save the search by entering a name here on the left. So if I click here, and I click music search, then I click on save criteria, that's going to save that search for me so I can come back to it later on. And now that we've found some options, found some good search results, we can return to the dashboard and see where all of that stuff ended up. So I'll click on my dashboards. Let's start with the saved criteria. All right, so here we can see that search I just ran, that music search. So what I could do later on in the future is just click run, and it's going to take me exactly back to the results and show me the parameters that I was using before. And what can be really useful about this is if you find some great parameters for your search criteria. If you want to come check back in 2-3 months later to see if there are any new funders available for you, all you do is click run, and you're going to end up back in that same search box. Next, let's look in our dashboard at the saved grant makers. So let's click on Save Grant Makers. And as we saw earlier, when doing a search, you can save those funders, and this is where they're going to end up. So here I see the Classic for Kids Foundation, the Crescent Porter Hale Foundation, and the Hobson Lucas Family Foundation. So with each of these funders, I've already saved them to a project. And then next we see the decision matrix and the priority. So now since we have 3 good leads, all of them funders seem like really good fit, but let's imagine, our team is pretty small, so we really need to prioritize our leads effectively. And this is a really important part of the grant seeking process and building your grant strategy that a lot of people miss out on. This is your secondary research. This is prioritizing leads and finding those leads that are the best fit for your program or project. Now, secondary research is really just investigating leads to find out if they're a good fit and how good of a fit they actually are. And as part of your secondary research, you want to research the grant maker and generate questions to ask them to help determine if they really are the best fit for your program or project. Now, if you're unfamiliar with secondary research, don't worry. Under our build strategy section, you can click here under secondary research. And here you're going to find tips and articles explaining the type of web research to do when visiting funders' websites if they have one. It also talks about how tax form and the IRS 990 fits into secondary research. And lastly, we have information about how to actually contact funders and how or the types of questions you should be asking them. So to start with your secondary research, a great place to look is actually at the funder profiles. So let's go back to those Save Grant Makers and do a bit of secondary research for the Classic for Kids Foundation. So let's take a look at their funder profile a little bit more in depth. So under their funder profile, I saw those information I've read before. The application guidelines are available on the foundation's website. This usually means they update them pretty frequently. We have the contact information, the primary contact, the annual giving they gave last year. So they gave $79,000 last year. So not a huge amount, but we would probably want to investigate them a little bit more. Here we see their EIN number, which is going to allow us to find out more about their IRS 990. And one thing I can do is either visit their website, or if they have a link, I can actually check out the grants they've awarded in the past. So let's take a look at the grants awarded to see how we might fit in. So when I look here, I see, first off, they gave in the Alameda, California, in the Bay Area Music Project. So that means they're already giving in my geographic giving area. that is a great sign. But when I look here, they're giving 1,000 to $1,500 in new funds. So even though they are a perfect fit for our funding needs, they're going to be only one of the players in our quest for $80,000. Now, what I would want to do then is do similar research for Crescent Porter Hale Foundation and the Hobson Lucas Family Foundation. And then with this information, I'll be able to accurately prioritize these leads. And we have a great tool built into your dashboard to help you prioritize your leads after you've completed your secondary research called the decision matrix. Now, this tool will help you decide whether or not a funder is a good fit and whether or not you should actually apply to this funder. So let's do a decision matrix for Classic for Kids. So all we do is next to the name, I click Start Matrix. So the decision matrix is this tool to help you prioritize your leads. So you're focusing on those with the likeliest possibility of success and the least amount of effort. The key is to figuring out the potential return on investment of writing a proposal and managing the award. So let's take a look at the decision matrix. We begin with the mandatory criteria. Do we meet their eligibility requirements? Should be yes for each one of these. Then we begin with the funder priorities. Are we in the funder's geographic giving area? Yes, we are. And I would answer each one of these questions accordingly. And then we have the credibility and readiness. What is our credibility with the funder? Maybe they don't know us too well, so we go with the 2. And we're going to answer each one of these. And then we would talk about the effort and timing. So I should have a pretty good idea of the effort and timing. And since they're giving smaller awards, I probably want an easier grant application to work with. Basically, you're going to answer all of these questions. And one good way to know, have you done enough secondary research, is can you answer these questions? Because if you cannot, that likely means you need to do additional research. And then I would just save that. And there I see the decision matrix score. So we have 36. What does this mean? It means from 0 to 15, not a good fit. We're going to drop them from our list. 16 to 30, these could be backup funders. And 31 to 45, get going on these applications. So since there are 36, that means they're probably a pretty good fit. And what I can do is actually decide to apply for this funder and add them to my plan. Let's click on add to my plan and click on done. Now, this is the final section of your dashboard we're going to look at here today. And this final section is for when you actually decide to apply for a specific grant opportunity. So let's look at one of these plans and let's take a look at the Classic for Kids Foundation. So I would click on edit. Now, this plan is going to help me stay organized. So we have the Classic for Kids Foundation, and I could assign a priority. So maybe this is a high priority, the status, we've not started. Maybe I am going to apply for $1,500 from this funder. If their application deadlines are posted, they would auto-populate there. And then I can also add in when I want to complete my draft by, when I want to submit it by. And after speaking with the grant maker, I should have a good idea of when it's going to get back to them. And then I could also add some notes. Tina is working on this. And then I click save. And that's just going to allow me to stay organized. So if I'm working on different projects, applying to different funds, I can keep track of that in my plan area. And you can export all of this information to your favorite calendar or in a CSV file as well. So now we've gone through one entire project. We began with a project description worksheet. We found our relevant search terms. We searched for funding leads. Then we investigated the leads. And finally, we decided to apply for a specific grant. And we're going to do one more search here as a very quick review. So let's go back to the projects tab. Now, for this second project, let's say you're located in New York. Your mission is to provide immigrant support services, and you predict a budget shortfall for this calendar year of $20,000. So you're looking for general operating support. Now, with this project, I've already completed the project description worksheet. And we go down here, take a look at it. And I've actually already found some search terms. So we have social service and issues general and target population, immigrants and refugees, types of support, general operating support. So I'm all set to find those perfect funders. So normally I would look at the state and federal. I'm going to skip those today and just jump in to the US charitable database. So just as a reminder, we begin with the geographic scope. So over here on the right, I click on New York. And I'll select national grant makers as well. So now I see a lot of results. But what I would want to do is add in my search term, social services and issues, general. Good. Still a lot of results, 604, way too many to effectively research. So I'd want to narrow that down a little bit more. I could look at the target population, immigrants and refugees, 29 results. That may be good enough for us. But since we're looking for general operating support, in these situations, we often recommend adding in that type of support because there are a lot of grant makers who do not provide general operating funds. So in this case, I'm going to add that in, and then I'm down to a much more manageable list. So then what I could do is take a look at these different funder profiles. See here the Altman Foundation is giving in New York City. So let's check them out. And I see there, they work on strengthening communities. They work on economic security. They provide general operating support. They might be a good lead. They also give in that grant range between 10 and 20 or $200,000. So I'd likely want to learn a little bit more about this funder, and I'll click on save. I'll save that funder. And then I would save them to that other project, the Community Support Services Project. Now we can investigate a few or one more additional grant maker. So let's look here. Maybe we have the Glickenhaus Foundation. They're also giving in New York and the New York City metropolitan area. And I see that they are giving with immigrants. They're working with, at-risk populations. They're providing social services, and they provide general operating support. And maybe if I already have a relationship with the Glickenhaus Foundation, I know that they're a good fit. I know that this opportunity is great. What I can do is actually save them, and I can save them to my Immigrant Support Services project, and then actually put them as a high priority right away. Now, of course, we'd probably look through the rest of these funders just to really get an idea of who's a good fit. Then what I would do next is save this project. So maybe it's the Immigrant Support Services. I'm going to save that search terms. Then let's jump into the dashboard again and take a look. So then I have that save criteria. We have that immigrant support service. I could just run that. Then we have saved grant makers. And now since we have a couple of different projects, we're getting a lot of grant makers in here. So this could start to get a little bit confusing. So if you're working on multiple projects, what you can do is actually filter by project. So when I go to immigrant support services, I will click apply. And then that's going to show me those funders who are for that specific project. And then, of course, I would do my secondary research. I would complete a decision matrix for each one of these funders. And then with all of that information, I would decide whether or not they are a good fit for my program or project before deciding whether to add them to my plan. So I hope those searches gave you a good idea of what is possible when you use our US charitable database. But before we move on to just a couple of additional tools, I do want to very briefly mention that in addition to these US-based grant makers listings, we also have 3 other unique databases, and you can find them under Find Grant Makers. They are Canadian Charitable, which is set up in the exact same way as our US Charitable, our Canadian Government, and our International Charitable. So if I click on International Charitable, this database contains grant listings that are beneficial to US-based nonprofits doing work overseas. So if you do any work abroad, this could be useful. And this database is structured in the exact same way, but the only difference is going to be in that geographic scope. So if you're working abroad, if you happen to be a Canadian organization, you can use these other databases to find funders that are a perfect fit for you. Now, that wraps up the information about our databases, but there are two additional tools that I want to mention because they can be really helpful when developing a grant strategy. The first tool is the benchmarker, and what I can do is find that tool under our public resources tab, click on benchmarker. Now, the benchmarker tool will help you answer the following questions. Are you submitting enough grant requests? How can you increase your number of requests? Are you receiving enough grants? How can you improve your rate? Are you pursuing grants for the right amount? And to complete the benchmarker tool, you simply answer the questions about your organization regarding your size, budget, mission, and previous award information. And after you submit, you'll receive a report which provides a complete breakdown of the survey responses of all the organizations that have your mission focus and are in your budget range. So I'm going to show you an example report, and I can do that by clicking on my dashboard and looking under reports. So let's click on the Benchmaker report and click on View. So this report is a great tool to see what organizations are doing when it comes to grant seeking. So you can find out how you fit. This was an example using education organizations with a medium budget, and I can find out what are organizations doing. It can help you set up a very realistic goals when it comes to your grant seeking efforts. Another great tool that is only available to members is the R3 tool, which is the Revenue Review and Report tool. So I can find that under Build Strategy, R3. Now, this tool will help you realize the grant's potential of your organization by reviewing where your funding is coming from today, projecting where your funding will come from in the future, and you can also receive recommendations on the next steps for exploring funding sources. To run an accurate report, you will need a copy of your operating budget and about 10 minutes. You simply enter in all the information that you see here and then generate that report. So let's look at an example. As always, it's going to be in your dashboard, reports. And let's view an R3 report. So here's an example of an R3 report that I've recently completed, and you can find that, like I said, in your dashboard. So as you can see, this report includes some great visualizations to help you keep track of where you are. These visualizations can be useful if you need to discuss grant strategy with your board or executive directors. At the end, you also get recommendations for grant seeking based on your current portfolio. So if you are, focusing too much on one area, it's going to give you some recommendations of other areas to explore when you are searching for funding. But ultimately, the benchmarker tool and the R3 tool can be used together to help your organization set grant program objectives that define how much to pursue and from which type of grant maker. So that wraps up all of the essential features of GrantStation. So what I'm going to do here is actually turn back on my camera. And just so you're aware, I think Kirsten is going to share that link with you now. But for members, you can actually access all of GrantStation's features for only $95 a year. The regular price is $699, but for members of Cause Inspired Media, it's only $95. So I think, Kirsten, are you going to share that with them now? Oh, I think you just did. Yep. So that is in the chat for anyone who wants to take advantage of that. So I am happy to answer any questions that anyone has. If not, I can pass it back to you, Kristen, to wrap things up for us.
I do have a question, and if other
Yeah.
people have questions, feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat. But I'm curious how your database is updated with new grant opportunities.
We have a team of funders. So there are funders who are going through finding these different opportunities and updating them on a periodic basis. So you can actually find out when you look at a grant maker. So if I go back to the US charitable section and go back, 1 second there, and look, for example, with that Classic for Kids Foundation. Oh, sorry, I'm in the search. Yeah. So if I go back down here, maybe if we remember that name. So basically let's see if they come up. Yep, so we see that funder popped up. And when we look at their profile, we can see actually when their funder profile was last updated. So I believe we have a team of, I think 5 or 6 researchers who are going through each one of these. They're finding different listings. And this one was updated in July 26, 2022. So only a few months ago. So we only accept funders who are actively accepting requests or letters of inquiry from a variety of organizations. If they have stipulations, if they're not open to other organizations, they are not listed on GrantStation.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions before we wrap up? Well, awesome. Thanks everybody for attending. I'll send out that link as well as a link to our recording in a few weeks. And have a great weekend.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.